Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. This is News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. The 9th Raisina dialogue begins in New Delhi. The Greek Prime Minister addresses the event as the chief guest, reaffirms India as a consensus builder and voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds delegation-level talks with his Greek counterpart Kyriakos Mitsotakis in New Delhi. Both leaders agree to bolster cooperation across defense manufacturing and trade to connectivity. The US urges the International Court of Justice to consider Israel's security, asks not to order withdrawal of Israeli troops from Palestinian territories. The UK imposes 6 new sanctions, new sanctions on 6 prison heads of the Arctic penal colony. This is where the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died. The US and EU also decide to slap major sanctions on Moscow over Navalny's death. The Raisina Dialogue is India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geoeconomics. It began in New Delhi on Wednesday. And the theme for this 9th edition is Chaturanga, conflict, contest, cooperate, create. So there would be some interesting thematic pillars as well, which include decolonizing multilateralism and the post-2030 agenda. The Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, was the chief guest. And he spoke on a number of issues of our current time. Let's listen.
India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geoeconomics, the Raisina Dialogue, began in the capital New Delhi. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi graced the inaugural session, which began with the keynote address by the chief guest, the Prime Minister of Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. He said that strengthening partnership with India should be the cornerstone of Europe's foreign policy.
Strengthening our partnership with India, and I'm speaking about Europe, should be a cornerstone of Europe's foreign policy. And this is certainly true for my country. We have made good progress over the past years towards achieving that goal, but we have much further to go. And Greece has an important role in this endeavor.
The Greece Prime Minister further in his address talked of Greece's support to the reform of the United Nations Security Council to bring countries like India on board.
And by the way, Greece is supporting the reform of the Security Council of the United Nations in order for leading countries such as India to be represented at the highest table and in order for their voice to be heard.
Greece Prime Minister praised India, saying India's example needs to be celebrated in terms of how democracy can deliver strong economic growth and also deliver prosperity that brings social cohesion.
You are an example to the world, an example which should be celebrated, a demonstration of how democracy can deliver stronger economic growth. This has been your record for a decade now, how strong economic growth can deliver prosperity, and how, of course, the delivery of prosperity can also strengthen social cohesion.
Greece Prime Minister further said that Ukraine is much more than a local war on European soil and termed it as a brutal challenge to international stability.
We Europeans do apply double standards, focusing on Ukraine at the expense of wars and crises in the rest of the world. And maybe there is truth in that allegation. But I would like to make the point here in Delhi that Ukraine is much more than a local war on European soil. It is a brutal challenge to international stability and the international rules-based order that India has supported and has every interest in maintaining.
Greece Prime Minister termed India as a consensus builder and voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world.
When it comes to shaping the direction of the global debate and addressing the great challenges that we face, India is now often regarded, and rightly so, as a consensus builder and as a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world. And we too often forget that the raison d'etre, the real reason why the international system was created in the first place, was simple because nations large and small recognized that their true interest lay ultimately not in antagonism and in conflict, but in partnership and cooperation.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, while delivering his vote of thanks, praised Greece Prime Minister's keynote address and said, as India expands its global engagement, it has already looked at Greece as an important partner.
Our collective appreciation to Prime Minister Mitsotakis for what I'm confident all of you will agree was a truly inspirational and thought-provoking address. His message of democracies that deliver resonates strongly, particularly now, particularly here. Prime Minister Modi's presence amongst us, as always, is a reminder of India's growing engagement with the world, especially in the last decade. He has shown us why it is as important to listen and reflect as it is to articulate and express.
The Raisina dialogue is committed to addressing the most challenging issues facing the international community. The theme of this edition is Chaturanga, Conflict, Contest, Cooperate, Create, with Jessica Taneja and Amritpal Singh, Shagnik Chakraborty reporting for DD India.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi met his Greek counterpart Mitsotakis in New Delhi. And this after the Greek Prime Minister was accorded a ceremonial welcome at Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi. The leaders discussed defence, agriculture, security and issues of mutual interest. Here's our report.
Two ancient civilizations that have shaped the minds of the East and the West, meeting at a time when the world is looking for change. Prime Minister of world's largest democracy, Narendra Modi, meeting his Greek counterpart, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, at the Hyderabad House in New Delhi. The two countries have a strategic partnership that has growing cooperation in defense and security.
भारत में डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में को प्रोडक्शन और को डेवलपमेंट के नए अवसर बन रहे हैं जो दोनों देशों के लिए लाभदायक हो सकते हैं। हमने दोनों देशों के रक्षा उद्योगों को आपस में जोड़ने पर सहमति जताई है। आतंकवाद के खिलाफ लड़ाई में भारत और ग्रीस की चिंताएं और प्राथमिकताएं समान है।
India welcomed Greece into the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. Prime Minister Modi emphasizing a common resolve to support dialogue and diplomacy as the cornerstones of conflict resolution.
हम सहमत हैं कि सभी विवादों और तनावों का समाधान डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी के माध्यम से ही किया जाना चाहिए। हम इंडो पैसिफिक में ग्रीस की सक्रिय भागीदारी और सकारात्मक भूमिका का स्वागत करते हैं। यह खुशी का विषय है कि ग्रीस ने इंडो पैसिफिक ओशन इनिशिएटिव से जुड़ने का निर्णय लिया है।
Prime Minister Mitsotakis, who's the first Greek Prime Minister to visit India in 16 years, emphasized that India is a key player in global affairs and is assuming the role effectively.
We know that the world today is facing unprecedented challenges that require immediate and efficient action, from the ongoing war in Ukraine to the situation in the Middle East, from climate change to food, energy security. For all these things, for all these challenges, one thing is certain. In order for governments to tackle them, international partnerships and collective action is paramount. And India has a critical role to play in this endeavor. And we view India as one of the main pillars of stability and security in the broader region of the Indo-Pacific.
The Greek Prime Minister sees India's growing role well entrenched in the hands of able and visionary leadership.
Prime Minister Modi, I have found a visionary, a principled leader, and dare I say, a true friend. And the importance that we attach to our relations with India is evident not only in the increase of our bilateral contacts over the past year, but also in the partnerships we have developed.
Prime Minister Modi invited Greece to become a partner of the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor. Both countries are keen to conclude a migration and mobility partnership agreement as soon as possible. The two great civilizations have agreed that UN and other global institutions must be reformed on priority to reflect contemporary reality, something that Plato, Aristotle and Chanakya would surely agree to. Bureau Report, DD India.
Later, India's External Affairs Minister briefed, India's External Affairs Ministry briefed the media on the state visit of the Prime Minister of Greece to India. The Foreign Secretary, Vinay Quatra, said that the Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement is in an advanced stage of agreement and could be finalized in the months ahead.
An important element of people-to-people ties that was emphasized by both the leaders in terms of our efforts to structure that cooperation is Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement, an area where there is complementarity of interest. It's in advanced stages of consideration, and we expect that this agreement could be finalized in months ahead.
The Foreign Secretary, Vinay Quatra, also said that discussions took place on the larger context of stronger connectivity between India and Greece, and also to look at the possible options that would strengthen the connectivity.
Both leaders reinforced their commitment to build, in this regard, the partnership in the Mediterranean Sea, as also in the Indo-Pacific. As I mentioned, they also exchanged views on how to build our cooperation in the context of India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor. Prime Minister Mitsotakis also conveyed the decision by Greece to join the Indo-Pacific Ocean initiatives led by India.
After 10 days of intense negotiations, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz and the Pakistan People's Party have finally reached an agreement to form a new coalition government. The PPP chief, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, announced that the PML-N chief, Shahbaz Sharif, will be the coalition's prime ministerial candidate, whereas his father and the PPP co-chairman, Asif Zardari, will become the country's president once again.
The agreement between Bhutto Zardari's Pakistan People's Party and the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz ends days of uncertainty and negotiations after the February 8 elections produced a hung National Assembly. As per the coalition deal, Shahbaz Sharif will once again become the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and Asif Ali Zardari will be Alliance's candidate for the country's president.
पाकिस्तान पीपल्स पार्टी और मुस्लिम लीग नवाज हुकूमत बनाने जा रहे हैं। उम्मीद है कि इंशाअल्लाह ताला जल्द से जल्द शहबाज शरीफ साहब एक बार फिर मुल्क का वज़ीर आज़म बनेगा। वज़ीर आज़म की इलेक्शन के बाद जो सदर पाकिस्तान का इलेक्शन होने जा रहे हैं, उसमें भी हम मुस्लिम लीग नवाज का शुक्रगुजार हैं कि वो पाकिस्तान पीपल्स पार्टी का उम्मीदवार सदर जरदारी साहब का हमायत कर रहे हैं।
As the two major political parties have reached a formal agreement to form a coalition government, political pundits say that both of them will have to deliver for survival.
The political space has shrunk. The two parties need to deliver if they want to stay in power and if they want to survive as parties. They no longer represent an alternative to one another, and the army no longer represents an alternative to either of them or both of them.
However, common people of Pakistan, bearing the brunt of inflation and rising militant violence, have little hope from the new coalition government.
उम्मीद नहीं है कि आवाम को कोई रिलीफ मिले, क्योंकि ये वही सियासतदान है, वही हमारे रहनुमा हैं जो 20-40 साल से 20 साल से ये हुकूमत करते आ रहे हैं और इलेक्शन के दौरान एक दूसरे पे कीचड़ उछालते हैं और उसके बाद जो है जब हुकूमत बनने होती है तो इक़्तिदार में शामिल हो जाते हैं।
मुझे तो एक ये मजाक लगता है। उसकी वजूहत ये है कि क्या पाकिस्तानी अवाम इस काबिल है कि इन्होंने ही हुकूमत किए गुज़िश्ता 40 साल से यही हमारे सरों पर मुसल्लत किए जा रहे हैं, तो मुझे तो ये बिल्कुल ही नहीं लगता कि ये चल पाएंगे ना। तो अगर ये मुल्क की मैशियत का आज जो हाल चल रहा है, कौन लोग हैं? यही लोग तो थे। क्या किया इन लोगों ने इस मुल्क और कौम के लिए?
The delay in forming a government in the nuclear-armed nation of 241 million has caused concern as Pakistan is grappling with an economic crisis amid slow growth, rising inflation and increasing militant violence. The country needs a stable administration with the authority to take tough decisions. Raghav Kumar Jha, DD India.
And still to come here on DD India News Hour. Fighting rages on in Donetsk region of the Ukraine as Russia intensifies missile and drone attacks. Farmers across the EU want reform of the EU Common Agriculture Policy. The US President Biden and the former President Donald Trump engage in verbal sparring over Navalny's death.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles, and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger, and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science, and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now, the former WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, faces a pivotal moment as his last chance to stop his extradition from Britain to the United States enters its final day. US prosecutors are seeking to put the 52-year-old on trial on 18 counts which relate to the release of troves of confidential US military records and diplomatic cables. Prosecutors say that Assange went beyond journalism and indiscriminately published classified US government documents, while Assange's lawyers told the court that the case is politically motivated and he was targeted for his exposure of state-level crimes. Meanwhile, Assange's supporters marched in Barcelona, Madrid, Paris, and Rome to support his fight against US extradition. And our correspondent Stuart Smith now joins us from London with more on the story. Stuart, how ill is Assange and what are his chances on humanitarian grounds?
He's so unwell, according to his lawyers, that he wasn't able to attend court either in person nor even by video link, and it's partly for that reason that his lawyers say he should not be extradited to the US, that both his mental health is very frail and also his physical health. His mental health, they're saying, is so bad that if he were sent to the US with the prospect of, for example, 170 years in jail for those 18 espionage charges, he's at the possibility of wanting to kill himself. In terms of his physical health, he said his lawyers say that he would not survive the trip there and then potentially tortuous US prison conditions. So that is one of the arguments being made. The other argument is that this is a politically motivated case and therefore Julian Assange would not receive a fair trial. That's important because while the UK and US have an extradition treaty with each other, which means they can send wanted suspects to each other's criminal justice systems for trial, if one of those countries believes the prosecution is political, then the person does not have to go. But countering that, which is what all Tuesday has been all about, are the lawyers representing the United States who say that he would receive a fair trial in the US, that the conditions would be adequate for Julian Assange, even with his mental and physical health difficulties, and also that he does need to face justice. They're insisting, they say, that when he produced his hundreds of thousands of documents on the WikiLeaks website almost 15 years ago, he was a grave and immediate risk to the individuals whose names he published through the WikiLeaks portal, and putting their lives at risk is something that the US needs to take seriously. He's also accused of conspiring with others to try to hack US federal systems.
Indeed, Stuart. And, why is Assange not being seen as a journalist by the prosecutors?
It's one of the fundamental issues during this case. His lawyers say he should be treated like a publisher and therefore not like a spy, not like someone engaging in espionage. But the prosecutors, throughout the numerous appeals that Assange's lawyers have attempted to get through the courts, keep insisting that he was not acting as a publisher in this way, because when he crossed that boundary, they say, of reportedly working with others to hack US government databases, that, they say, crossed the line. Now, the lawyers for Julian Assange say he was not involved. He did not conspire with anyone else, such as Chelsea Manning, to try to take information illegitimately. They say he was the receiver of the leaks and he published the leaks like so many other newspapers have in the United States, and therefore he should be treated under the usual journalistic protections for whistleblowers and those publishing material which is deemed publicly and politically very important.
Stuart Smith, thanks very much. Britain on Wednesday also imposed sanctions on 6 individuals in charge of the Arctic penal colony. This is where the Russian Navalny died last week. The British Foreign Secretary David Cameron confirming those sanctioned will be banned from the UK and also have their assets frozen. Meanwhile, the US will unveil on Friday another major package of sanctions against Russia following Navalny's death. These latest sanctions will target Russian defense and industrial bases, along with sources of revenue for the economy. A war of words broke out between the current US President Joe Biden and the rival for the Oval Office, the former President Donald Trump, over circumstances that transpired following Navalny's death. The former President Trump, who's vying to enter the White House again, compared his legal woes to the treatment of Navalny. And he said that Navalny, a very brave man who probably should not have returned to Russia, and his successor, President Biden, thrashed his Republican rivals' response, claiming that Trump has always blamed America. At least 6 people were injured in an overnight attack by Russian drones in Donetsk in Ukraine. On Tuesday, the US President Joe Biden has announced that he's going to impose more sanctions, as we said, on Russia.
Ukraine's Donetsk region once again came under attack from Russia. At least 6 people were injured in an overnight attack. Russia's top general, chief of the general staff, visited troops fighting in Ukraine to discuss the next steps after taking the town of Avdiivka.
State awards for liberation of Avdiivka. I congratulate you on those awards and I wish for the success in liberating our lands.
Russian president awarded medals to the combat and training units of the country's aerospace force for fulfilling Moscow's special military operation in Ukraine.
I am happy to use this opportunity to present high state awards to flight units of Aerospace Force. Their personnel, officers and enlisted personnel showed courage and bravery in the course of the special military operation. They have carried out thousands of sorties, demonstrated utmost skills when completing the assigned missions.
Amidst the war, Germany's supply of weapons to Ukraine has caused controversy in all sectors of society and drawn widespread criticisms from the public.
We believe that war logic will never bring praise. Military means and thinking will only increase the suffering of people in conflict areas.
While United States promised more support to Ukraine, US President Joe Biden announced to impose more sanctions on Russia.
I told you we'd be announcing sanctions on Russia. We'll have a major package announced on Friday. I'll be happy to sit with you all when doing that, okay?
Ukraine, in its latest report, said that its forces had repelled multiple Russian attacks in the past 24 hours. The Ukrainian Air Force and missile units also conducted strikes on Russian personnel and equipment, air defense systems, and other facilities.
And now on the conflict in West Asia, the Israeli Defense Forces are continuing their operations against Hamas in Gaza. This is despite the ICJ pressure. Israel has vowed to press on into the very south of the Strip, where 1.5 million Palestinians, many displaced, are gathered. The U.S. insists that Israel needs a plan to evacuate civilians before any advance. The IDF says that it is targeting terrorist infrastructure. Now, farmers across the continent are refuting agriculture policy and the European Union's environmental rules. The protesters, wearing yellow vests, waved Spanish flags while blaring music from loudspeakers gathered at Central Independence Square in Madrid. The farmers are demanding reform in the European Union's common agriculture policy. The French Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, tried to ease tensions with the farmers and promised a new law that works in the favor of the farmers' income. The protesters have broken out into protests in other countries as well of the European Union. Hungary, for instance, farmers there have expressed their discontent against the new EU agriculture policy. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Turkey's Turkey's fifth-generation fighter jet. It completed its first flight on Wednesday as part of the country's efforts to upgrade its air force. Turkey launched its TFX project to produce a national combat aircraft in 2016. The room in Belgium where the U.S. Army officer General Anthony McAuliffe, who helped turn around the country's bloodiest battle of World War II and refused to surrender, has been opened to the public for the first time. The Bastogne War Room, these include the immersive exhibition space, as well as a visit to McAuliffe's cellar, and also a remarkable look at the barracks in the wooded Ardennes region. The Japanese artist Yoshiki launched his fashion brand Maison Yoshiki Paris at the Milan Fashion Week on Tuesday. The show featured over 30 looks of glamorous and genderless designs. As described by the artist, the collection it's created to be flamboyant with a rebellious touch. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour, we're going to be discussing the Indo-Greek relationship in the context of the Prime Minister Mitsotakis' visit to India. Also, the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes has issued a notice regarding the Sandesh Khali incident. And the Border Roads Organization has cleared snow and restored vital roads in Jammu and Kashmir.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. The 9th Raisina dialogue begins in New Delhi. The Greek Prime Minister addresses the event as the chief guest and reaffirms India as a consensus builder and a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world. India's Prime Minister Modi holds delegation-level talks with his Greek counterpart Mitsotakis in New Delhi. Both leaders agree to bolster cooperation across defense manufacturing, trade, and connectivity as well. The US urges the International Court of Justice to consider Israel's security, asks not to order withdrawal of Israeli troops from Palestinian territories. The United States on Wednesday urged the World Court not to order unconditional withdrawal of Israeli troops from Palestinian territories. The statement came as the UN's top court, it was asked on issuing a non-binding advisory opinion on charges against Israel in respect of Palestinian territories. Israel has warned that the legal hearing might cause a hindrance in reaching a negotiation. The ICJ is hearing arguments from 52 countries and 3 international organizations, the largest number of parties to participate in any single World Court case. The Delhi NCR continues to witness traffic nightmare amid heavy barricading along borders due to farmers' protests. On Wednesday, commuters struggled with heavy traffic jams. The traffic movement in the capital, in the national capital, that's Delhi of India, it was impacted adversely and the vehicles crawled at a snail's pace. The farmers' protest has badly affected shopkeepers who are also on the borders. And in this situation, the earning of their living has become a tough task for them, especially even for daily wages. The Agriculture Ministry and the minister there, Arjun Munda, has said that the government is ready to discuss all issues in the next round of talks with the farmers. He invited these farmers and their leaders to a 5th round of discussions and has urged them to stop their protests and to maintain peace. And going back to our story on the ICJ and what's happening there, we are joined by Caroline Malone on what the US's stand is. Caroline, how different is the US's position on Israel's security needs from the others who are presenting their views at the ICJ?
Well, the US certainly has a more nuanced approach than some of the other countries that we've been hearing from at the ICJ. More than 24 countries are expected to give their opinions, but overwhelmingly so far, it's been in support of Palestinians and for the withdrawal of Israel from some of the occupied areas, and also, of course, in support of Palestinians and the humanitarian crisis that's being suffered in Gaza at the moment. But from the US perspective, it's very much concern about 2 things, really. Ongoing negotiations that include trying to have some kind of truce, maybe a 6-week pause in fighting is on the cards, as well as the withdrawal, the release of hostages that are still being held by Hamas. And those hostages include some US citizens, as well as Israelis and other nationalities. And in fact, the US is also concerned about lasting peace and about security for Israel. And in a statement, a State Department representative that was speaking at the ICJ said a movement towards Israel's withdrawal from the West Bank and Gaza requires consideration of Israel's very real security needs. You know, they're referring there, of course, to what happened on October 7th with the Hamas attack in Israel, but also the ongoing need for Israel to have the right, you know, to a state in itself. And that does also seem to be what the US is pushing on an international stage, including at the United Nations, pushing for a two-state solution that could give some kind of lasting resolution to this situation. They've also said that, you know, violence isn't the way forward, but neither is unilateral action. So the US, yes, definitely taking a slightly different approach from some of the other countries we've been hearing from.
Indeed, Caroline, but you know, you have been saying that the US has been talking about a lasting solution, a more durable solution to the conflict. What is really the mandate of the ICJ, you know, in this hearing?
So the ICJ actually has two major ongoing hearings happening. One was earlier that had to do with allegations from South Africa that Israel was carrying out genocide against Palestinians. In that case, the overall conclusion that was given thus far was to try and better protect civilians, was to try and better protect Palestinians and reduce the amount of humanitarian suffering that's ongoing. So kind of a softened stance really from the ICJ, but nothing really that's written into international law that anyone has to comply by. And you can really see, I think, from the ongoing action and the suffering of Palestinian people, you know, the take would be that it hasn't really had any impact thus far. Then in this second case that's ongoing this week, when we're talking about withdrawal of Israel from some of the occupied territories, because they're hearing from so many people, it could take another week, up until Monday of next week, until we get to the end of the advisories. And it may even take months for the ICJ to come to any type of conclusion, really, and to offer their advisory note. Some countries, actually, including Canada, have even said they advise that the ICJ doesn't give an advisory note, doesn't give a release, because it could impact the ongoing peace talks. And that really comes back to, you know, the take of the United States, which is that it does want to see a withdrawal, it does want to see peace, but it needs to be a lasting peace. And that's something that we've seen at the United Nations Security Council, the US vetoing a resolution brought by Algeria for a ceasefire because they don't see it as having enough of the detail for lasting peace.
Caroline Malone from Washington, D.C., thanks very much. And now let's turn to our story on India-Greece relations, and we are joined by Amrit Lagoon, who is the former Indian ambassador to Greece. Thank you very much, Ambassador Lagoon. So Prime Minister Mitsotakis has spoken about the importance of India not just to Greece, but to the whole of Europe. And how do you view this? Because at the end of the day, I mean, India, of course, is massive in terms of its size, and he also talked about democratic values, but also there are various other affinities, isn't it?
Yeah, there are a lot of other affinities which can underpin that. Of course, in the European context, the importance of Greece lies mainly on two aspects. One, that in terms of location, Greece is, if we go from the east, is located just at the doorway of Europe, with its very big harbors like Piraeus, Thessaloniki, etc. And secondly, Greece has been a member of EU since a very long time, and its currency is also euro. The third aspect to note is, as Mr. Mitsotakis rightly said in the Raisina dialogue keynote address, which I had the privilege to attend just 1 hour ago, that Greece has successfully come out of its economic challenge or economic crisis that it had got into around 2008 or 15 years ago. It has been given investment rate status. It has in Europe, it has one of the fastest reduction debt to GDP reduction country. it has achieved, and it has prepaid its debt to IMF 2 years in advance when I
Right.
was still there. So, but in addition to that, both the countries going back to their ancient civilizations,
Right.
where Mr. Mitsotakis said that oldest democracy and the largest democracy are joining hands together, and so they bring a new dimension, a new thought process in the present world, where everything people look for quick fixes. So with both countries having deep ancient civilizational heritage, that way of running through consensus in the modern world and finding solutions become very important.
Indeed.
And last year, when Prime Minister Modi had visited Greece, after the last Prime Minister visit being in 1983 of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, that was a very what you call flexing point in the two countries' relationship, because not only the visit happened after a long time, but also in the visit it was decided or underpinned to raise the level of relationship between the two countries to a strategic one. And as soon as Mr. Mitsotakis was invited to India and to give this keynote address in the Raisina dialogue, combined with his bilateral visit, so he readily accepted it. So within 6 months, he
Yes.
has made a visit, and there is a big. We should also not forget that
Right.
there is a big delegation of businessmen who are accompanying him, led by their Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, who deals with economic matter, Mr. Phragianis,
Okay.
whom I used to interact with when I was in Athens, and who had planned for this business trip when he was there. And it so happened that it is combined with the Prime Minister's visit.
Indeed, we are also joined by Vivek Mishra from the Observer Research Foundation, who's with us. Mr. Mishra, Mitsotakis also spoke about Ukraine, and he used the word that it's a brutal challenge to international rules-based order. And then, of course, he talked about the Indo-Pacific theater and how India is playing a very significant role. What do you think? I mean, in terms of building a consensus, was he trying to talk really about a possible consensus to the conflict in Ukraine?
Yes, I mean, if you look at the European interests, particularly of the interests of Greece from an EU perspective, and also from the perspective of the individual country of Greece, I think it fits in that mode, right? Because he is pitching up something that is core to the European interest, but also taking into account the interests of the Indo-Pacific country, a primary Indo-Pacific country, which is India. So, and given the context that a fractured world order, given two wars, that has certainly prevented the connectivity that both Europe and Asia, and particularly India, was looking at through the IMEC project and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So I think it's a combined concern that the fractured world order and the conflict should stop. And I think there is a consensus there. And the Prime Minister has spoken on this issue quite a number of times. So I think what the Prime Minister of Greece is trying to say here is that they're able, they're pitching this idea to be able to walk half the distance on bringing peace and stability to the world order, and talking about a rules-based order, which quite sort of pairs with the idea of India and the idea of India's security interests in this region, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, where we talk in the same breath as on issues of the rules-based order and the steps that need to be taken to be able to ensure that rules-based order.
Ambassador Lugun, in what way can Greece contribute or partner in the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor?
Yeah, as I just mentioned in my earlier remarks, Greece, because the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the exit point in the Mediterranean is with the port of Israel, Haifa port. And after that, for going to Europe, you head towards west. And the first major ports you hit is the Greek ports of Piraeus, Thessaloniki, and there is another one, I just forgot the name, which is between the two, where our companies were showing interest to invest. We must note that Piraeus, before the Greek crisis happened, economic crisis, used to be number 26 in terms of handling cargo in Europe. Now it is number 4 and very closely going to become number 3 if the rate of growth continues and the way Piraeus is getting expanded. And then Thessaloniki in the north, they had big plans to make it a deeper port,
Right.
and from there to make railway lines going right up to Vienna, Belgrade, etc. So you don't have to go further west into the Mediterranean to offload your carriage. The big containers can be offloaded in the Greek ports, and from there through rail and road transport, it could be further transported to its precise destination in inland Europe, especially for countries like Hungary, for Austria, even up north, Sweden, Finland. These can save a lot on transportation. So that will make a lot of economic sense.
Yes.
And secondly, we should also know that Greeks are very big players in the shipping world. They are the largest ship owners in the world continue to be Greeks. Which about 26 to 27% of shipping, merchant shipping fleet and cargo shipping fleet in the world.
Indeed.
So that way, they have that natural fare. The corridor can be very effective in.
So
in
that
reducing.
also is an interesting point, which leads me to my next question, Mr. Mishra, about the Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement. Why is this, going to, in what way is it going to benefit both the countries?
See, Europe is an aging continent, and I think to that extent, mobility partnerships always help, a transition from a country like India, which has a low average age and also can provide a great number of skilled people to Europe. I think it is time, and you see more of these partnerships being struck by more and more European countries with India, and recently in non-European countries, Israel has led by example on how Indian laborers got an opportunity to go there and find work. So I think there is one, the question of age. There's one, the second, the question of skill, and then there is obviously the question of people-to-people connect. And I think all these three come together when we talk about mobility partnerships. Increasingly, India is signing these partnerships with European countries as well as countries in the Middle East, because there is a diaspora connect. There's a renewed diaspora connect that this government has laid emphasis on, and I think that is really translating into power diplomacy.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Vivek Mishra from the Observer Research Foundation and Ambassador Lagoon. Thank you for your time and for enlightening us on this important relationship. In a fresh development, the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes in India has issued a notice regarding the Sandesh Khali incident in the western state, in the eastern state of West Bengal. The state government there had indicated significant concern over the matter. In fact, the government has indicated significant concern over the way the West Bengal government has handled this matter. The Vice Chairperson and the team from the Commission, they are scheduled to visit the site on February 22 to assess the situation firsthand. After being surrounded by from all sides and also being strongly reprimanded by the court, it has become difficult for the TMC government in the state to defend itself Protests broke out in Sandeshkhali. This happened in North 24 Parganas district earlier this month after 3 men were accused of land grabbing and also sexual assault.
संदेशखाली में जो हो रहा है उसे हम दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण मानते हैं। इतनी भी हिम्मत नहीं है कहने की, हमें लज्जा हो रही है, इतनी भी हिम्मत नहीं है कहने की, तो इसे क्या कहा जाए? बीजेपी सारे बिखरते हुए इंडिया गठबंधन के नेताओं से एक सवाल करना चाहती है, आप क्यों खामोश हैं? क्यों खामोश हैं? क्या देश की संदेशखाली की बहनों माताओं की इज्जत का कोई आपके लिए पैमाना नहीं है क्या?
Let's take a look now at other stories making the news. India's border road organization spearheaded snow clearance operations along the Ranga-Baltal to Sonmarg route in Jammu and Kashmir and restored vital roadways crucial for the region's mobility and accessibility during the winter season. The Indian Navy on Wednesday said that its warship INS Shivalik, deployed in the Gulf of Aden, provided medical assistance to an Iranian shipping vessel, a fishing vessel, which was carrying 18 Pakistani crew. The move came after the mission received an alert of the medical emergency by the Iranian vessel. The Forest Department in Mahasamund district, which is in the central Indian state of Chhattisgarh, launched a public awareness campaign known as Gajayatra, and the objective of this was to address the reducing instances of human-elephant conflict. The Deputy Chief of the Indian Navy, Vice Admiral Tarun Sobdi, interacted with the Deputy Commander of of the Naval Fleet of Iran, the Southern Fleet, Commodore Jalil Mughadam. This happened on the sidelines of the Milan 2024 exercise, and they exchanged views on the contemporary maritime security environment and the challenges. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Gujarat and Uttar Pradesh on the 22nd and the 23rd of this month. On the 22nd of February at around 10:45 in the morning in Ahmedabad, the Prime Minister will participate in the Golden Jubilee celebration of the Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation. At around 12:45, the Prime Minister will reach Mahesana, which is also there, and he will be performing darshan at the Valinath Mahadev temple. At around 1 p.m, the Prime Minister will be participating in the public function in Tharab, which is in Mahesana, where he will be dedicating to the nation and also laying the foundation stone of various projects around 8,350 crore rupees worth. So also at 4:15 in the evening, the Prime Minister, or in the afternoon, he will be reaching Navsari and he will be dedicating to the nation, also laying the foundation of several projects, initiating work, commencement of multiple development projects, and these are worth about 17,500 crore rupees. In the evening at 6:15, the Prime Minister will be visiting the Kakrapar Atomic Power Station. He will be dedicated to the nation the new pressurized heavy water reactors. Banas Dairy of India is said to be among the largest in Asia, and it's all set to increase its footprint in the eastern part of the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be dedicating the dairy plant to the nation on the 23rd of February. The dairy was launched in 1969. This was part of Operation Flood and is popularly known as Amul globally. Vishal Barrister reports.
Packaging milk inside this high-tech plant in Varanasi focuses on the scientific methods of animal husbandry. It collects milk from the 8 districts of eastern part of Uttar Pradesh, which is also the most populated state of India. Collecting around 3 lakh liters of milk every day, the dairy has registered 80,000 milk-producing families.
Daily, we receive 5 to 6 tanker from Khushipur MCC, 1 to 2 tanker from Cholapur MCC, 2 to 4 tanker from Mirzapur MCC, and 1 or 2 tanker from Gazipur MCC.
The dairy is aimed at empowering women in the region. Banas Dairy is a success story of the Cooperative Milk Society.
पूरा ये ग्रामीण एरिया ही है
और यहाँ पे मुख्यतः इस व्यवसाय से किसान और बहनें हमारी जुड़ी हुए हैं और इससे पूरे पूर्वांचल और बनारस में दुग्ध क्रांति की दिशा में एक बहुत बड़ा पहल है जो यहाँ पे बनारस डेयरी का उद्घाटन माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के शुभ कमलों से उनके कमलों द्वारा होगा.
Amul, the popular dairy brand, is also called the taste of India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to dedicate this plant to the nation during his Varanasi visit.
This plant has a 10 lakh liters processing capacity, will be producing 10 tons of sweets, 70,000 liters of ice cream, will be producing, we can process dahi, that is curd, and buttermilk, and paneer, which will be about 20 tons per day, and this plant can be expanded if need be.
Aiming at empowering the women in this part of the country, the Amul plant is all set to take the sweets of Varanasi like Lal Peda and Long Lata to the national stage. With cameraman SP Dubey in Varanasi, this is Vishal Barister for DD India.
Lakhs of devotees, hundreds of thousands of devotees, they pay obeisance and they also worship Sri Swasthani and also Madhav Narayan during the month-long fair that takes place in Shanku district of Kathmandu Valley. People visit this temple called the Bajrayogini temple. This is a temple that carries ancient historical, cultural and also it's of touristic importance. So during this month-long fair, what happens is that the devotees, they bathe in this pious river, the river Shali, in the morning, and they offer puja, and then they offer puja also to Goddess Saraswati. They recite religious hymns and they fast. This is during this month. Around 300,000 devotees visit the Shali Nadi, the river Shali. It happens every year. Let's get you some sports news now. Arsenal are going to be facing Porto in the first leg of the Champions League. It's happening Wednesday. Arsenal's head coach, Mikel Arteta, is excited about this match, especially since it's the Champions League last 16 tie. It's happening after 7 years for him, while Porto's coach, Sergio Conceição, is also thinking about winning. The pop superstar Taylor Swift added another honor to her long list of accolades. This happened Wednesday, winning the Global Recording Artist of the Year award at the this is for the fourth time from the IFPI, which is an organization that represents the recorded music industry. That's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lin from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.